Fishel. So thank you for joining us today. We are very honored to have Dr. Edward Tick with us, discussing a soldier's heart, veteran healing through ritual and ceremony. We will be recording this, and there's also CMEs available, and Dr. Tobi Fishel will be moderating. Next slide, please. So our mission for the USC Institute for Integrative Health and Wellness is to promote health and healing of individuals, families, and communities we serve through the advancement of the practice of integrative health, the science upon which it's based, and the education of healthcare practitioners and our USC community and beyond. Our vision is to transform healthcare by establishing a collaborative, holistic paradigm that promotes health and healing and integrates all aspects of human life: physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, cultural, social, and environmental. We always like to make a land acknowledgement for the work that we're doing here at USC, at IIHW, and also at Children's Hospital, acknowledging our presence on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Gabrielino Tongva peoples. We recognize that these people were forcibly removed from their homelands. We take this opportunity to acknowledge the generations that have gone before, as well as the present day Gabrielino Tongva people. With humility, we recognize and respect all Indigenous people, their histories, and their ties to the land. We pay respects to their past and present. Let this acknowledgement serve as an ongoing reminder of the original inhabitants where you reside and where we're working and presenting from today. So, as you know, there is CME credits available for this live presentation. If you send your friends or colleagues to watch it on our YouTube channel, they will not get CME credits, but by being here today, you will. Have to be submitted within 24 hours. You can see the activity code, log into EADS, or scan the QR code to the right. I want to always recognize the executive steering committee and the staff that make this possible. There's lots of faculty and lots of staff that work in front of the camera and behind the camera, making this all happen. Um, Getting Dr. Tick here is, everybody rolls their sleeves up, makes it happen for him with regards to organization, CME, the recording, and running a webinar. And so I just want to thank everybody for all their parts and pieces to make this a reality. Roxana's assisting us today, and I always like to give a shout out to Dean Varun Soni, who is the Dean at the Office of Religious and Spiritual Life. All right, I'm going to pass the baton over to Tobi, Dr. Fishel. And again, thank you so much for being here today, taking time out of your day. And I know this is going to be an incredible presentation. We're very fortunate to have Dr. Tick with us today and moderated by Dr. Fishel. So thank you very much for being here. And I will pass the baton. Dr. Fishel.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Maybe Roxana, you can take down the slides for now. Thank you. So I'm so grateful that we could have Dr. Tick here. Ed, thank you for being here so much. And I'd like to invite us to start, since we're talking about ritual and ceremony, how I start every session I have, every talk I give, by taking a moment, a sacred pause. And so perhaps we can just either close our eyes or we can soft gaze, lower our eyes and just take a breath together. Just notice our chest expanding as we breathe in and letting out as we breathe out, lowering our shoulders, inviting our jaw to soften and our throat. Noticing our fingers and our toes, maybe our feet on the ground, underneath the ground, the beautiful earth we call our mother. And with everything going on in the world, just taking a pause and being together. It's a sacred, holy moment to be fully present. I'm so grateful. And as we're doing that, as we're breathing together, I would like to invite our ancestors, our teachers, all that is visible and unseen who support and teach us. And when you're ready, come on in. And we could see how just that moment changes everything, right? Brings us here. And now I'm here and I really see you. And I hope you really see me and feel me. A few words about ritual and ceremony. We know from many research studies, many research studies, looking at the importance of creating sacred space, embodying experiences like we just did. We didn't talk about taking a pause. We actually took a pause together, right? It helps us connect to people in a different way, in a closer way. It helps us become more embodied. It helps us enhance our memory of experiences. And with trauma, that affects our memory in so many different ways. It's very important to be able to embrace and feel in our body something now in the present moment. It also invokes the feeling of something sacred. So we're not talking about just an everyday experience, but this is holy and healing. It deepens our capacity for transformation, right? And it also has been known by indigenous cultures all around the world for millennia that when we use ritual and ceremony, it enhances healing. And that's why I asked Dr. Ed Tick to join us today. So a little bit about who he is. He is an author of many books, including Warrior's Return, Restoring the Soul After War, War and the Soul, The Practice of Dream Healing, and many others. I've read every one of his books. He is a psychologist, he's a poet. I call him an explorer, a healer, a mystic, and I am proud and humbled that I can call him a colleague and a friend. And in 2016, my husband and I journeyed with him on a sacred pilgrimage to Greece, where we had many fellow travelers, and a few of them were veterans. And I'll say that that trip transformed us, transformed the veterans, and it was healing in a very profound way. So thank you, Ed, for bringing us on that beautiful journey. It was also magical because that's when my husband and I got engaged. So, of course, that made it extra special. Um,
Especially so.
right. Dr. Tick takes veterans to many places, one of them being Vietnam. And there was a documentary that was made illustrating his work, his healing approach, how he works, and how he feels, and how he is connected in such a deep way to the work and to the people he works with. So before Dr. Ed Tick speaks, we're going to actually watch the video. And so I ask forgiveness for the clunkiness in which I do that, but we're going to watch the trailer in just a moment. And here we go.
Some of us came back dead. Some of us came back alive. Some of us came back with a little of each. I had death in me, and I still have death in me.
Post-traumatic stress disorder has had over 80 names throughout history. PTSD is proof of a soldier's humanity.
My teeth are chattering, and I'm praying that I don't want to die. Please, God, I don't want to die.
Something in my soul could not integrate the experience. A deep part of myself lost a sense of hope.
Each of them waited a lifetime to make a single pilgrimage backward.
just want to tell him I'm sorry.
We have to make the suffering conscious in order to achieve healing.
More came home because of me!
I feel like I'm in my own soul. My soul being healed by this country.
Here we go. So I cry every time I see the trailer. I want to encourage everyone, if you haven't seen the full documentary, it was astounding and heart-wrenching and beautiful and important. And so on that note, my friend, Ed Tick.
Okay, well, thank you, Toby. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Oksana. Thank you to everyone at the Institute for all the great work that you do, for working assiduously to pull our world back together in a holistic way. We've been broken for actually 2,000 years, and uh, good people like everybody here is doing the work to try to reformulate, reconstitute holism in a world that's been shattered. We all know that. So I'm honored to be with you all. And thank you very much for this opportunity and for sharing my work. And especially Toby and Mark, it was magnificent to be together with you in Greece. And thank you for honoring and remembering that. And yeah, your decision to get married was one of the most special and sacred times of that whole journey, of course. Okay. So I'm honored to be with you. And Toby began our program with this brief trailer from my work in Vietnam. I just want to say at the opening, this is, though we could do an entire program about Vietnam, journeys back there, and the Vietnamese not having PTSD compared to us having epidemic. We're not doing that today. I want to mention that. And what we're sharing today, though some of it will be stories about the journeys back to Vietnam, what we're sharing today is the use of ritual and ceremony for veteran healing in general for all wars, all times, and all places. And it's not only about going back to Vietnam or places we fought, it's about the essence of ritual, what it is, how to use it, how to construct it in order to achieve deep trauma healing for veterans and also for civilians who have survived trauma. So let's jump in. Next slide, please. Next slide. There we go. Okay. Toby blessedly began us in a ritual manner. And in that brief excerpt from the trailer, we see how ritualized military life is. Uniforms, parades, the right ways to behave, the missions are on, the ceremonies along the way. The military is highly ritualistic. And for all of us who are counselors and therapists, counseling and therapy are highly ritualistic, only we don't usually think about it and say it. However, Toby, bless you, thank you, framed this presentation in our time together in a ritual manner. So we're going to do a little more of that. I have an invocation for today's program. You see, it's a song from Sitting Bull. This was actually the song that he created and sang to his people as he was being initiated as head chief of all of the Lakota and Cheyenne people to resist the white incursion. So, Sitting Bull's invocation, which I use with veterans from all backgrounds and all ethnic groups. You tribes, behold me. The chiefs of old are gone. Myself, I shall take courage. So with this invocation, I'm also lighting a candle for us. As Toby said, we are in sacred space, and I invite you to consider us together in sacred space for the next hour while we're together. And you can't quite see it very well, but my little candle holder is in the shape of a butterfly. In ancient Greek, the word psyche, psyche in Greek, we call ourselves psychologists and psychotherapists and psychiatrists. We all need to remember and affirm that psyche means soul, not mind. We are called to be healers of the soul, and the mind is part of the full package we come with, but we need to restore our soul. So the butterfly is in honor of the soul work we do, and psyche also meant butterfly in ancient Greek as well as soul. The soul was pictured as a butterfly, a spirit butterfly inside us that's released on our death. So, with the candle, with Toby's beautiful opening, with our deep breathing, I invite you to feel ourselves for the next hour in sacred space and sacred time. When we're creating ritual, we are moving from ordinary secular clock time, from chronos into kairos, into sacred time and space, where these divisions disappear and we are more united with each other and with the universe. Sitting Bull's prayer is very important for many ways, but briefly, look, you tribes, behold me. Warriors need to be seen and witnessed and honored by their tribe. No matter what we think of the politics, the warriors are not doing what they're doing for politics. They're doing it in service to their nation. So you tribes, behold me. We need to create opportunities for the public who are served to see and behold and honor the warriors. The chiefs of old are gone, as Toby shared. We're calling the ancestors here. They're not only our personal ancestors, they're our collective ancestors. And in the Native and other spiritual traditions, they always called and worked with the ancestors and experienced the ancestors as alive and with them. So today also we are calling the warrior ancestors, and in particular, the archetype that is wounded in military service, the warrior archetype, the spiritual warrior that is in the universe and is in all of us. And we call and evoke the spiritual warrior to be with us and help us with this work. And then finally, Sitting Bull reminds us the warrior's path into service and home is very, very difficult, and it takes very much courage. And we have to have the courage to do the work and to work with our warriors and do the work together. So Sitting Bull's invocation is relevant for all of our work together. Okay, next slide, please. One of the many ways that ritual has been used for millennia is when we have compelling needs for healing, for growth, for transformation, and when we've passed beyond what we know in our ordinary daily human life and our professional lives, when we don't know how to bring more healing from our conventional methodologies, then we turn to ritual. And ritual can bring transformation and healing beyond what we usually experience day by day, hour by hour, slow week by week in the consultation room. And so ritual is a radical and intensive form of bringing healing. And especially when there are needs or wounds that we don't know how else to heal. So I invite all of you, as we move through this hour together, think about a compelling need that you have, that a patient has, a loved one has, that is not yielding to conventional methods. And there'll be a lot of ideas about how to construct ceremony and ritual as we go through this. I'm going to tell you the punchline. There's another meditation slide at the end, and I'm going to invite you to imagine constructing a ritual for this person whose need you identified now. So carry it through our journey together. feel us in sacred time and space, feel the ancestors, the archetypes with us, united with us, and stay open in your imagination to ways that you can use ritual for any yourself or any of the people you're serving. Next slide, please. Okay, I want to share, I will share several stories as we go along. I'm not sharing the stories of these two people right now, but this is to illustrate the point. On the slide on the left, obviously, is one of our warriors who's come home in great pain and anguish and despair. And that is often, perhaps usually, how our people come home. And it's very, not only because of the traumatic experiences in the military or in the combat zone downrange, we need to let go of that as thinking that that's the main form of therapy. Of trauma. Homecoming is also a terrible form of trauma. Whenever, and this is not just Americans, whenever warriors or first responders or anyone else is sent into a violent and dangerous atmosphere, it's really hard to come home. And it's not just the exposure to the traumatic events in the atmosphere, in the situation, but how we are treated when we come home and whether we're received, responded to, and given everything we need for healing. So the picture on the left is the anguish people come home with, and we hardly know what to do. And the picture on the right, you see, is a very, very happy and content and healed Vietnam veteran. And we are in Vietnam, and that man's laughter and smile were infectious. And we didn't begin that way. He transformed to bring back his spirit and bring back his joy and his hope and live a very, very good life. So to illustrate the importance of homecoming, we know how many of our veterans feel broken as the warrior on the left when they come home and can't find their place. This is a homecoming story. This is a true homecoming story from the Seattle area, the Pacific Northwest. Okay. I worked with a woman who had been, she was coastal Salish, so she's from the tribes up around Oregon, Washington, and she was a nurse in the Korean War. Her duty, she was one of the nurses who was always on the medevac helicopters flying our wounded out of the combat zone and taking care of them, strapped on the struts while they were transported back. So she said, I spent more time on the helicopter struts during my time in Korea than on the ground or on ship or anywhere else. I want to share with you how she came home. As she was flying back into Seattle, she looked out the window of her plane and she saw down below her entire tribe turned out on the field waiting for the plane to land, and they were all in the shape of a Native American medicine wheel. So the whole tribe was there, and their most sacred symbol was created as a living symbol to welcome her back into the living, intact community. She came home to community, not to loneliness, or not to isolated families who don't know what to do. All right. The plane landed. The tribe was there. She wanted to rush up and get lots of hugs, but the elders of the tribe, the medicine men and the medicine women, stood between her and the community, and they said, no, you can't do this. You can't even touch anybody. They're here to welcome you and shower you with love, but we elders are taking you into the wilderness for 3 months to take the war out of you. So they did. So with sweat lodges and vision quests and burial ceremonies and all of the other intensive psycho-spiritual holistic rituals in the Native American tradition, they worked with the nurse for 3 months, and they took the war out of her, and she returned to her community very healed, very strong, and became one of the elders in that community over time. So we can bring people home this way if we're wise and caring enough. And homecoming can be a positive experience such that it brings healing and resolution of the the accumulated trauma that otherwise we have to try to do slowly over months and years of therapy. Okay, next slide, please. So we're dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder and moral injury and other unnamed wounds. We are dealing with the invisible wounds of war and trauma. This is a brief story. This story opens my book, War in the Soul, and I won't go into long detail, but a veteran named Art was at the siege of Khe Sanh during the Vietnam War, a very long, intense, 4-month-old long, very bloody siege at a remote fire base. Art was on the front lines defending his base sometimes. He was a machine gunner, and he vividly told me the story of being behind his machine gun when a suicide charge of dozens, maybe hundreds of enemy soldiers came at him and overran his position and his comrades. They all ran up the hill and got away. Art was still down there alone. And he said, I was completely surrounded by enemy soldiers. I should have been dead 1,000 times over, he said. And at that moment, he felt his soul leave his body. He felt his soul like a huge jet stream of energy come out of his center, out of his core, his navel and his heart, and zip up the hill and pull him up through the charging enemy soldiers so that not only did he survive, he was completely safe and he got away without a scratch. We asked him what happened and he just says, my soul fled. My soul fled. Then there was an empty chair next to us. He asked me if I believed him or thought he was psychotic. And I said, yes, of course I believe you. Soul loss is a true experience, and traditional and spiritual cultures around the world have spoken about it, talked about it for hundreds, thousands of years. Souls can be wounded, souls can get lost, souls can leave, and souls can return. So, he said, I was sure you were going to tell me I was crazy. Everybody else has. And I said, no, you're not crazy. In fact, I stood up then and I asked him, where's your soul now? He said, well, it's right here in this empty chair. It's not in me. It's next to me, watching you to decide if it's going to trust you. So I stood up. I stood in front of the empty chair and I bowed to the chair and I addressed his soul and I thanked his soul for bringing him home safely and promised that we would do the best work we could to try to reunite and make his life a home for his soul again. This happened about 40 or 45 years ago. And so this was one of my early and most important lessons working with our warriors about what really happened, what really goes on during violent and combat trauma. Next slide, please. Okay, so from the world's spiritual traditions, they don't call the wound post-traumatic stress disorder. We know of more than 80 names this wound has had since ancient times. Traditional cultures know of it. It's in the Bible. It's in Greek and Roman mythology. There are many different names and many different ways of conceiving it, and it almost always is conceived of as a spiritual wound. The work everybody is doing with brain chemistry and the vagal nerve and restoring our interconnections is great. I'm not throwing that out, but we are inviting us to take a further step into the transpersonal, into the archetypal world. One of the ways I conceive of what we call PTSD is that it's a wounded warrior archetype. We all have the warrior archetype, and when it experiences too much brutality and violence, and when it's not trained and guided in the right way, it becomes wounded and the shadow warrior takes over. And so PTSD can also be conceived of as possession by the shadow warrior. All right. The picture we see, the wound being called the spirits left him. This is Lakota. This is the Sioux people. They called what we call PTSD, they called it Nahinapeapi, which means the spirits left. A warrior or anyone traumatized with violence experiences their spirits leaving, being empty, depleted of spirit. And so then the recipe is to restore the spirit. And in the native tradition, they call the healers, this is also Lakota, and Sitting Bull was one. They call their healers the medicine chiefs of warriors. And that was so important in their culture. Sitting Bull was a medicine chief of warriors. He said it was the most important thing I ever did for my people. More important than being the full chief, more important than being a warrior, was being the one who healed the warriors, who restored their souls and spirits so that they could serve through their life as elder warriors for all of us. So think of, when we're working with trauma, think of the spirits left, and we need spiritual restoration. And think of yourself as being in that sacred role of being a medicine chief of warriors, working to bring the spirits back. Next slide, please. So we're still looking at our diagnoses from the psycho-spiritual indigenous perspectives. What we call PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, I translate as also translate, not throwing away the work we've done, but enlarging it to be holistic and include all of the aspects that you at the Institute are trying to bring together. Post-traumatic soul distress. Our symptoms are the way our soul talks. The body keeps the score. We've all learned that by now. It's become a proverb. When our souls are afflicted and cannot express it, or have not been healed or treated correctly, have not been brought home correctly, or we don't even have the words to express what is going on inside, it turns into symptoms. Hippocrates, 2,500 years ago, said, all our illnesses begin in the soul, and over time they accumulate and manifest through the body. So we're trying to hear the soul and hear it and what it's trying to say to us through the symptomatology. So think of our people being in soul distress, and their souls are crying through the symptoms. In addition, post-traumatic social disorder. When we don't bring people home correctly, we have social disorder. When only a few of us have to serve and carry the burdens for everybody, and most of us get away free and clear, never having to serve, that's a social disorder. When any country spends most of its resources on military and death and destruction rather than serving the people, that's social disorder. When our warriors come home and we have specialized hospitals and services for them, but they don't come back into society, and everybody doesn't work together, like the tribe waiting for their nurse to come home, that's all social disorder. So PTSD is also a profound betrayal by the social order against the warriors for not giving them what they need. And then it becomes, all of you in the medical field know this concept, but it's not well known in the general public or to most healers. There are diseases of adaptation, which means the germ or the virus or the battle I was in wasn't the original cause of the disease. I have to adapt to dysfunctional and unhealthy conditions. So when veterans come home and they don't get what they need, and in Vietnam they got spit on, now they get largely ignored and pushed off into their own small communities. Developing PTSD and moral injury is a disease of adaptation. They're adapting to the lack of veteran warrior understanding and support and healing in our kind of culture. And they're adapting to a very individualistic, very competitive culture. So PTSD is the shape of the adaptation, not necessarily or not exclusively the response to traumatic experiences in the war zone. So with all that and understanding the distress from this condition, from this perspective, then we can see the recipe for healing is actually 3 little words: spirituality in community. We need to be in community. People need to come home to their tribe and experience the tribe welcoming them home. And we need to restore the spirit that had been drained by the experiences in the war zone and in the homecoming. Okay, next slide, please. So we go to a healing story, and I will share several, and you'll hear rituals. I have a full book of mostly of poetry called Coming Home in Vietnam. Notice the title is Coming Home in Vietnam, not Coming Home from Vietnam. The Vietnamese say, "We know of your wounds and we know of your suffering. We're sorry you couldn't come home in your own country, America. Please keep coming to Vietnam so we can heal you with our love." And you see 2 of our veterans loving and tending Agent Orange disabled children in Vietnam. This is also a story about their wounds and ours. I'm going to read a poem. It's called Praying. And this is a true story about a veteran from Massachusetts that went back to Vietnam with me. All right, there's 2 short stanzas. The first stanza is when he was in combat in Vietnam on his 19th birthday and what happened there. Then the second stanza, he was caught in a suicide charge. His unit took the lives of about 300 enemy soldiers in the suicide charge. Tragically, then they dug a huge hole and they bulldozed all the bodies in. And this veteran had been tortured by this for decades and decades and wanted to go back to Vietnam and confess to the people and return the bodies. Because he had been having countless nightmares of those dead, of their souls crying to him and screaming to him and wanting to go home. Finally, decades after the war, he went home and we did find the place and return. I'll tell you what happened after. So the first short stanza is his 19th birthday. And then the second stanza is going back to Vietnam and meeting with the people in the village and returning that death site. It's called Praying. Never in my life did I pray so hard as that day at the smoking bottom of the mountain, among giant boulders and fallen trees, when the enemy overran our wire and sprouted like berserk rice stalks no farther away than the length of my rifle, and our muzzle holes became God's wrathful eyes. That's the battle. That's the traumatic experience. Then we went back. Never in my life did I pray so hard until today, on the cloud-crowned top of this mountain, among smiling statues and wafting incense, when their children took my hands and called me uncle, and monks bowed to me as if I were a saint, and I embraced their dead as my true brothers, and God's loving eyes gazed through my torn and mending heart. When he returned the gravesite, the Vietnamese experienced it as, and these are their words and their teachings, "You brought the souls of our loved ones back to us." In their belief, when we take a life, the soul of that deceased clings to the killer and goes with them. So like traditional people believe a lot of Vietnamese souls are trapped here in America and need to travel back. And they experience them coming back and being given back by our veteran. So they loved him, they hugged him, they put their babies in his hands, they asked for his blessing, and he couldn't believe he was allowed to cradle newborn Vietnamese infants. Then he waded into the lake that was covering over the gravesite, and he wanted to be with the souls. See, these are all pieces of ritual that we put together organically, and you can do. In the lake, he went in up to his, well, he submerged himself. He wanted to be under the water where the souls had been sleeping. When he came up and came out of the lake, well, what do you know? He had lost his wallet. And there's no way of finding it again in that big Vietnamese lake. He laughed and he said, "Oh, now I really get it. I just gave up my old identity. I'm no longer a terrified, crazed, traumatized Vietnam combat veteran. I'm reborn. I was baptized in the lake. These people are smothering me with their love and their gratitude. I don't even feel like I deserve it. And I'm reborn, and I'm going to build a new identity." Since then, he's traveled back to Vietnam a number of times. He fell in love with a Vietnamese woman. They got married. They had a child, and they truly became a Vietnamese American family, and they live in both countries and put the countries together. So this is profound reconciliation and healing and putting the world we broke back together. Okay, next slide, please. So we're talking about rituals. And in brief, the ritual is a container for our stories, for our memories, for our emotions that need expression and need support and witness in community. So we as facilitators keep the patient and the community in the container and move them through the ritual. We're not doing psychotherapy while they're in the container. We're letting the ritual activities do the healing work. And we're facilitating the process. And the roadmap is not just the container. We design it as a roadmap to move the patient through the steps that they need so that the ritual itself provides the transformational journey that addresses the urgent needs of the soul. Next slide, please. And let's talk about ritual for a moment. I like the word patient in its original meaning. You see, the medical meaning, somebody who is ill and needs a medical doctor, was not added to the word until the 14th century. A patient is somebody who is suffering, bearing, supporting, enduring. And we need to remember that rather than the diagnosis. And I love this quote that I'm sharing, and this is so relevant to our warriors. The man from the dreary edge becomes the center. He's out of order, nothing more. I don't like our complicated quasi-scientific diagnosis, post-traumatic stress disorder. I do like the word disorder because we have become disordered. And again, in traditional cultures and in ancient cultures, healing is restoring the logos, just restoring the inner order so that it is back in harmony with ourselves, with each other, and with the ways of nature. So we can easily understand how our warriors, without being given the help and support they need, become the man at the dreary edge or the woman at the dreary edge, and we're bringing them back into the center, and the entire community is engaged in the healing. And in fact, the healing we see, his cure is the wish of everyone. We all are wishing for the healing, and we're all healing together as we help our warriors and their families come home and heal. Next slide. Okay. So we'll think a little bit more about the construction of ritual. This is another picture from Vietnam, and you can't tell, but the figure in white is one of our veterans who was serving right in this area. The figure with a cone hat behind him is one of the Vietnamese locals from this village where the battle that he was in happened. And the two people in front are women who were on our journey who were walking with him and supporting him. What this vet wanted to do, ritual, again, we create ritual with the elements of the earth, the four elements, with the humanities, and with the natural and human encounters. We specifically choose them and design them to address the soul wounds. This man was terrified of rice paddies. He never wanted to be in one or near one again. But as we were in Vietnam and he was getting softer and softer and opening up, he did want to be in the rice paddies. And then he finally wanted to walk through them safely and he had been in firefights and had been ambushed in rice paddies. He didn't want to be afraid of them anymore. He wanted to embrace with the Vietnamese that, oh, rice is their main crop. Rice keeps the whole country alive. So this ritual was with a Vietnamese friend and with two of our travelers to take a long, slogging walk through the rice paddy and know that it's safe and nurturing and beautiful, and let himself be baptized by this water as well. So it's one example of constructing a ritual that's specifically designed to address the individual soul wounds. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, I want to tell you a full healing story. The picture's from Vietnam, and I could tell you this story, but I'm not telling that one right now. But what you see is that we went back to the battlefield where this man Terry served. And we're literally at a foxhole that he served in during the battle. And he had been the captain of the company in this battle. And so we went right back to the front line. He cried, he called for his soul to come back to him. He had intense catharsis right at the battlefield where it happened. And he let go of decades of accumulated grief and pain. So that's the picture you're seeing. But I want to take a few minutes to tell you a longer story. Oops. Right. To tell you a longer healing story to demonstrate how we can construct the pieces of the ritual specifically to address the immediate healing needs of the particular veteran. So this is a story about a man named John. Not only do I have permission to share it, but it's John Fisher. He is a Vietnam veteran. He wrote a book called The War After the War. It's what we're talking about, how hard it is to come home and all of the ways he found to come home, including us going to Greece together. And I want to share in detail how we constructed this ritual. So we were in Greece together for, I don't remember, 2 or 2.5 weeks. At first we were in Athens, and the second day we're in Athens, I told him, the next day we're doing a healing ritual for you. So be prepared. So in Athens, we went to a place called Keramikos, which is the old warrior cemetery. It's like a version of Arlington National Cemetery from ancient Athens. All of ordinary warriors and the honored, more famous warriors were buried there. We went to the warrior cemetery. John could hardly walk in. He said, this is harder for me than going to the Vietnam Wall in Washington because I can feel all the warrior spirits from the past. So we worked on him. We did therapeutic touch and Reiki and massage and talked. And finally, we did a meditation walk through the cemetery. As we were on that walk, we stopped and I told John, I invite you to choose one of the warriors' tombstones and sit on it and lean against it and pray for the restoration you're looking for. So he sat on a tombstone. I remember it well. It was a cavalry cavalryman's tomb. And the rest of us surrounded it and we prayed for him and gave him positive energy. And John was crying and crying and praying, and his eyes were touched shite, and suddenly he threw his hands up and he had a beautiful smile and he said, "The light just came back on. The light came back on." "What do you mean, John?" He said, "I don't know, but it's been pitch dark inside me since the war, and something just turned the light back on. I don't know what happened or how it happened, but I feel great at the moment." Okay, good. So we're not going to talk about it. We continue with the ritual, and we walk to the old city walls of ancient Athens. And we stood on the spot where Pericles, the ruler of Athens during the Peloponnesian War, had given very famous, you should read it, the funeral oration over the dead of the Peloponnesian War. And he spoke about the beauty of democracy and healthy countries and the place of warriors in protecting it and our ultimate vision for a fair and a just world. And then we invited John to stand in Pericles' footsteps, right where Pericles stood. John, now you're the leader, and now it's your turn. Tell us your story. So John told his whole, as much as he wanted to, of his time during his Vietnam tour. And I'm not going to share the details of that. What I'm going to share right now is when he did that, he talked for about a half hour. And when he was done, he said, "From now on and forevermore, I am no longer a disabled or traumatized Vietnam combat veteran. From now on and forevermore, I am a spiritual warrior whose tragic service was in Vietnam." Hear the profound identity shift? I'm a Vietnam vet and America doesn't love us, to I'm a spiritual warrior. I gave warrior service in the way a warrior should, and I embrace that identity. That was John's first ritual day. Later, we went to an island called Kos, K-O-S. It was Hippocrates' home island, and actually the island of the very first medical school in the Western world. We in Greece, we do a practice called dream incubation, which is actually the origin of medicine and psychology in ancient Greece. We incubate for dreams. It's analogous to Native American vision questing, where they go into the wilderness to get visions from the earth spirits and the ancestors. In dream incubation, you go into a cave or into a small enclosed chamber or a building in the ancient world that was reserved only for this. And you fast and you pray and you meditate and you wait for a healing dream or vision. And I've written books about this and I practice it, so I can't go into that in depth. But it's like the origin of Jungian analysis of doing an intensive ritual in order to provoke big dreams. And they really do when they come. So we were on the island of Kos, where Hippocrates taught, and we did dream incubation ceremony for John and a few others. We tuck the person in at sunset, and they stay in bed all night long, swaddled and fasting and waiting for dreams and visions. And there's always a supporter next to them. All through the night, John kept waking up and popping awake with combat nightmares, and he'd be sweating and his eyes would be twisted and he'd be very upset. And the supporter always asked, are you okay? Do you want to stop the ritual? Is it too hard? Each time John said, "No, I'm not done. I need to go back to sleep." I was with John from like 3 a.m. until dawn, and he kept having the nightmares and going back. Then at dawn, remember he said the light came back on? When the light of dawn came through the window and first hit him, he sprang up in his bed with a huge smile and he said, "I'm done. I'm done. It's all over." I said, "Good morning, John. I'm happy to see you. And you're smiling. What do you mean it's all over? You're done?" He said, "I don't know. I just feel clean and free and pure and empty inside. That was about 15 years ago. John didn't have any more combat nightmares after that. John led his own healing journeys to Vietnam. John volunteers in VA hospitals. John actually fell in love with and got married to a woman who was on that journey with us, was one of the supporters in these circles. It completely transformed his identity. He had intense catharsis, released the dreams. He emptied the accumulated traumatic memories through that night of incubation. His identity shifted from Vietnam veteran to spiritual warrior. And we had a community made of our group and also some Greek people who joined us, supporting him and loving him and through the entire thing and wanting him to come back and allowing him to witness everything that he needed to say to us. So this is an example of how we can structure rituals to address the particular needs of the individual and take them through the entire ritual until they go through an initiation, a death rebirth, death of the old self and the way we're carrying our wounds, and a rebirth into a new identity and a new internal order that carries the wounds in different ways without breakdown. Okay, the next slide, please. Okay, so we're looking briefly at all of the components of ritual. Of course, there's the patient, the one who is suffering. And there's the compelling need beyond our ordinary capacity to know how to address it. So we design rituals and ceremonies to carry and address the dimensions of the wound that aren't accessible in everyday ordinary practices. There has to be the magus, the magician archetype present, the one who can facilitate the magic. So think of yourself when you're doing a ritual as that you are fulfilling the magician archetype, the wizard, Merlin, medicine men and women, Sitting Bull as the medicine chief of warriors. These are all the magus, the magus, the magician archetype who's orchestrating the experiences to bring transformation. We also need the community with trust and awareness, love and desire for the healing, and with a tradition and spiritual practices to bring to the ritual. And as Tobi did for us today, and we do together, we suspend the secular and create and enter sacred space. And we also invoke the divine, the ancestors, our spirit animals and guides. We invoke the invisible powers not to be in the sacred space and be with us and touching us and guiding us. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. There we are. Okay, still with the components of ritual. There are traditions and legacies through which the rituals happen. My books, War and the Soul and Warrior's Return, talk about, I don't know, countless rituals from traditional cultures the world over that have been used for Warrior's Return. So I also invite you to read those books and read about all the different kinds of rituals there are, things you'll never have thought of. Building in New Guinea, you build a house for the man you killed who is an enemy in another tribe, and you invite his family to move into it. That's just one of many examples of radical rituals that completely restructure ourselves and each other and the society we're living in that we don't even know how to think of, but traditional cultures have for millennia. So then we have the structured experience that includes the encounter, immersion in the culture and penetration by the spirits, reordering of our inner world and guidance from the transpersonal. And we are meant to sacrifice for it, and we are in ordeal, and we do, it is proper to give a gift or an offering after the healing. We also need recognition and witnessing and honoring by the community. And as we heard from some of the stories, it's an initiation. There's a death rebirth. Sometimes people receive new names. The community gifts them. They are in a different social and spiritual status in their community with higher responsibilities. So the Vietnam vets we talked about and the Korean vet all came home and became community leaders, helping the Vietnamese, helping other veterans, helping their tribes. So warriors are meant to serve throughout the life cycle, not in a combat or military role, but to evolve into a spiritual warrior serving their communities. So finally, the end of the ritual is blessing. Of course, we bless the patient, we affirm the transformations, and we thank and bless the community for giving themselves in this way. So all of these are components of ritual, and we include them all when we're designing ceremony and ritual for our people. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is an important one. I'll try to take the time we need. All right. I've written about these in both of my books in detail, War in the Soul and Warrior's Return. I have been doing this work for decades and decades, as you can tell, and in my study of the world warrior traditions, American and indigenous and world warrior traditions, these are the 6 steps of return that are necessities that in one way or the other are universal. They're not about any particular war or any particular culture. Some version of these are found in all cultures. And what do we know? Veterans are going to do them or try to do them spontaneously and organically on their own if we don't give them these steps. So I want to go through the steps and ask you to imagine how you might facilitate such a step. Because what we're doing is creating a ritual that replicates the entire return journey, but only in 3, 4, 5 days. And commonly, my staff and I ran intensive 4-day journeys, retreats where we took people through the entire series. So first, isolation and tending. Vets will isolate, in seedy motel rooms in their parents' basement and in the wilderness if they're not given the safe, loving isolation and tending. In traditional cultures, the warriors were put into a warrior teepee where they stayed being tended by the elder warriors and given everything they need and as much rest and downtime as they needed until they were ready to take the next step. The second step is affirmation of warrior destiny. And you heard the warriors in our ritual do it. I'm no longer a Vietnam veteran, I'm a spiritual warrior. Vets group together to affirm their warrior identities and destinies with each other. We need to help and support them in making that affirmation a public declaration. There's always intensive purification and cleansing in many different ways. There are vision quests and sweat lodges and burial ceremonies. And Greek tragic theater was purification and cleansing. The warriors wrote them, the warriors acted in them, and the entire audience experienced intensive catharsis, releasing of the toxic emotions that had been held back. And then there's always storytelling. And with all due respect, I protest brief therapy that does not allow people who need to tell their stories to tell them. And I've been with lots of veterans who said, I had a really sincere therapist who tried to help me with brief techniques. They wouldn't let me tell my war stories, so they stayed locked up inside me. I need to tell them, I need them to be witnessed, and I need to experience other people helping me carry them. So storytelling is essential. And then restitution in the community means 2 things. The veteran gives back to the community to help heal after harming the world. And the community is buying back the veteran and restoring the veteran to his or her rightful place as a wanted leader and elder in the community. And then finally, veterans going through the process when they're not collapsed and they can carry their stories without collapse, they are initiated as elder warriors, or as John said, spiritual warrior. And my beloved brother friends, you see, Wilbert and Nopkus, they're Salish warriors who came back to Vietnam with me. And we used some of their rituals and we used Vietnamese rituals, and we adopted each other as brothers, and they healed extraordinarily and became leaders and actually dance chiefs and healers in their tribe. So that's, I'm sorry that this is condensed, but these are all the steps, and you can read much more about them in my books. Okay, next slide. I apologize, I'm rushing now because we only have a few minutes left and we want some time for your comments and questions. So very briefly, the differences between psychotherapy, conventional psychotherapy, and practicing ritual. Secular versus sacred. Psychotherapy can be framed as sacred, but we don't usually. The rituals are always framed with the sacred. Therapy is individual or small group. Ritual is in community always, and the community is an essential part of it. And even when we're doing small group therapy work, that's a community, but a community of people with the common wound. And we're talking about becoming part of the larger community with our wounds recognized and supported by the larger community. In therapy, the transference is to the therapist. In ritual, the therapist is only doing the facilitating job, guiding through the experience. And so the transference is to God, to the divine, to the transpersonal powers. Much, much more powerful healing transference. The facilitator intervenes and directs and guides. It's not the same as doing our interpretations and questioning the way we do it in therapy. Just keep the ritual moving and the people moving through the ritual. Therapy is time limited, 50 minutes or an hour, and rituals time is open. We can do it anywhere, and we want to leave as much time as possible to go through the experience in a total way. We all know how often after a therapy hour, people just start crying in the last 2 minutes. And, oh, shucks, I wish we could stay for another week together. Well, in ritual, we can. And then the concept of repairing what has been harmed in therapeutic practice versus restoring and reordering the inner world so that it is the logos, the inner world of the soul, is reordered in a healthy way. So, and ritual aims to do that. So these are some of the differences between them. Okay, next slide. I won't go through all of these, but you can see all of the special uses of ritual. We seek visions, we honor, we achieve cleansing and purification, reorder the inner world, welcome stories, and make the storytelling safe, reintegrating into the community, practicing atonement, that's restitution, connecting with the dead, that's also forgiveness and reconciliation. And I love Jung's phrase. Jung said, in the modern world, the archetypes have all dried up. So I just reverse that and say, yeah, well, they're dried up. So what we have to do, we water the archetypes. And so these rituals are watering the archetypes, especially the magician archetype in the therapist, and magic is happening. And of course, the warrior archetype that we're restoring to its healthy spiritual condition, not its broken shadow warrior condition that is what we call PTSD. Okay, forgive me for talking so fast, but here we are. And we will have a few minutes for your questions and comments. So now a meditation again. I invited you to imagine yourself or a patient or a loved one who carries some kind of wound that might really need a larger, more expansive address through ritual. So now I'm inviting you for a few minutes now and forever from now on to imagine rituals that you can use, that you can create and facilitate, that address the soul and community dimensions of any of the wounds that you work with. And the picture is back to Vietnam. You can see there are 3 Americans and 3 Vietnamese, and the man in white and the man with the black cap are both Viet Cong veterans. And look at their smiles and how they're holding the hands of our warriors. And the man in red was Southern, the army of the South Vietnamese army, and he also needed healing and reconciliation with the former foes in Vietnam. They're completely reconciled. They're one country again, and he wanted to be with and meet his American brothers, and so he's been my guide in Vietnam for 20 years. And the rituals we do, the welcome, the forgiveness, the love that's exchanged is extraordinary. And it's what we need. So this is an example of veterans who came home in Vietnam because they couldn't come home in the United States. So with that, just I continue imagine rituals that you can do, use any of the practices and principles that we've shared today, create your own, find others. The world is full of really fascinating rituals that we can adapt for healing. And now we have some time for questions and comments. We can go to the next slide. Leave this up for a few minutes.
Thank you. This is Toby. I have a few comments, and I'll start us off with a question while folks, you can use the Q&A button on your webinar to put in comments and questions, and I'll read them out to Ed. So first of all, I just want to comment on the homecoming story. 3 months of ritual and ceremony to take the war out of her. Extraordinary. And so wise, right? That person's not ready to be in community. The community's not ready to have you yet. They're going to welcome you, and there are things we need to do first to get you prepared. And so, so the question I have is, I'm wondering, is the VA approaching this in any different way yet? I know that you've worked with different VAs, and if not, what could we do? What could we do here to offer support for this very wise way to welcome our warriors home?
Oh, okay. There's an adage in the veteran world that goes, when you've seen one VA hospital, you've seen one VA hospital.
Yeah.
They really do vary greatly depending on the leadership and the staff and the community that they're in. So I've been in hospitals that are quite enlightened, and they're doing a lot of community work. They're including the community. They have meditation, acupuncture, yoga, and other moral injury groups. And then there are VA hospitals that have little or nothing holistic or alternative. So that's an ongoing issue. It's getting worse, of course, under our present political conditions. I won't make a political comment and go in that direction now, except that PTSD and moral injury is exceedingly severe today under the conditions that we're fighting with. So what can we do? Well, you can, if your VA hospital is open to it, you can get interns in there. You can get volunteers in there. You can try to work with VA staff to encourage and train these kinds of practices. You can check out if your VAs, what kind of trauma groups do they have? Do they have, a lot of VAs now do have moral injury groups, and they're different. There's much more storytelling and discussion about restitution. Like, what do I have to do to become a positive force in the world and practice atonement because I harmed the world and took it apart? So also encouraging restitution and atonement practices, and we're trying to work with the VA staff to get some of these concepts in there. And be sneaky and plant some of your interns who are holistic into VA internships and help them bring this kind of material into the VA hospitals.
So what I hear is we could all be advocates for our communities, and that I know that we're all touched by war, even though we think we're not. We're all touched by war because they're in our community. So thank you. There's a few questions that I'll read out to you. One is, in the last photo that you had with the 6 people, was relationship developed between former enemies?
Oh my gosh, more than that. Thank you for the question. I may cry when I give the answer. All right. The man dressed in white, the elder, he was known as Mr. Tiger. He was at war. He was never in the military. He was always local militia. So he was Viet Minh and Viet Cong. He was at war for 25 years against the Japanese, then the French, then the Americans. He is the kindest, most loving, most friendly, forgiving person. Extraordinary. Not a hint of traumatic wounding. When our vets asked him, you really don't have PTSD here, and you know of our wounds, and you're hurting for us. Well, thank you. So how do we prevent PTSD? They asked Mr. Tiger, and he just smiled and said, oh, that's easy. If you want to prevent PTSD, just stay home. Mm-hmm. And that's a serious answer. We laughed, but it's serious because always, 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 aggressor nations have much more traumatic breakdown than defender nations. Always. So aggression itself into somebody else's territory to take their lives and their land and their wealth and livelihood is always far more traumatizing and causes far more moral injury. Mr. Tiger also said, when our vets asked him, why are you hosting us to a meal? Why are you so friendly? Why are you welcoming us this way? He said, because we're not enemies, and the war ended on April 30th, 1975. We were your friends on May 1st. We're so sad here in Vietnam that it took you so long to learn that. And why am I welcoming you? Because we are brothers and sisters who survived the same hell. Brothers and sisters who survived the same hell. And I'll quote another Viet Cong veteran who said to our group, this one's name is Tam Tien. I love these people. He said, again, to our group, saying, why are you hosting us and welcoming us with such generosity and love? And he said, from now on and forevermore, Vietnamese and American veterans must be the lips and the tongue of the same mouth, telling the world the same story. Profound. So there's a world vision here, Tobi, and for everybody. There's a world vision of, there's an African proverb. Dina taught us this, I think. My enemy is someone whose story I have not yet heard. Right? When we hear each other's stories, we realize we are the same and we've survived the same hell. And the world vision is that we're all trauma survivors around the world now and through millennia. If we can step into ritual space and storytelling space together and everybody tell their stories and openly, lovingly listen to the other people's suffering, then we can all realize we're brothers and sisters who survived the same hell. And trauma, as bad as it is, actually gives us an opportunity for bringing community and world healing if we use it correctly and wisely.
I have a few more for you. Roxana, maybe you could end the slideshow so that since the Ed and there we go. Okay. This is from a veteran, Ed. So it says, good morning, Dr. Tick. Thank you for your time. I'm thankful a friend sent me this webinar. I'm a young veteran working in the psychedelic industry. Like many others, they saved my life. I'm interested in psychedelics and if psychedelics are ever part of your ritual and what your thoughts are about that.
Thank you. Great question, and welcome home to you. Okay. I'm going to say something larger about psychedelics. We as a culture have become so spiritually bereft. We're all hungry for spiritual experience and connection. And we are so bereft of ritual, we're hungry for ritual as well. So when we use psychedelics, and especially if we use them responsibly, prepare in advance, set intentions, have a magus, the trusted magician present to guide you and support you. Prepare for a long time beforehand, have your intense journey, and then also integrate it carefully and wisely and with help afterwards. So yes, psychedelics are also using ritual, and psychedelics are a shortcut to achieving transpersonal experience because we don't know how to do it. So I actually don't use them in my work. I'm not against them for the reasons I'm sharing. We need the spiritual recreation through intensive radical ritual. But when I lead journeys to Vietnam or to Greece, and we're together immersing in another spiritual culture that has ancient rituals, and we practice them, and we're together for 2 weeks or more doing intensive cultural immersion, we achieve those similar breakthrough experiences that you achieved with psychedelics, but without using them, but using intensive radical ritual and cultural immersion over time. So, yes to psychedelics used carefully and respectfully and with the spiritual base, and helpful, and it is essential to have the transpersonal experience. And psychedelics are way not the only way to have transpersonal and non-normative experiences. And we can and we should, and I'm working, and some of us are working to bring back radical ritual without the use of chemicals so we achieve the breakthrough organically.
Right. Very
I just want to
important.
add, I want to add one thing to what Ed's talking about is that, and we have some programs on psychedelics historically on our IIHW YouTube channel. It's the psychedelics are often just the beginning, right? There's a lot of work that still has to happen after the psychedelic has been introduced. And you'll hear that time and time again from experts in that space. And so it is not typically just the psychedelic that is then sort of the silver bullet per se. There's a much longer process, and he's done that involves more interpersonal reflection and other types of journaling and other types of therapeutic or ritual work that needs to happen as a function of that. So to our question asker, the veteran, I just want to be really clear that it's a good that can be a good starting point for some if used appropriately, but then there's a lot of work that still happens afterwards. Just wanted to add that.
Right.
Thank
Thank you, Dr. Gold. That's right on
100%.
target. And I'm going to underline what we're all sharing. The survivor needs to be, whatever it looks like, on their own spiritual journey. The psychedelics can kick it off and get you going. Let's remember 12-step programs are the same way, right? You're invited to be on an urgent spiritual journey and do a lot of demanding inner work. Remember, Sitting Bull said, "Myself, I shall take courage." It's hard work to do this homecoming, and it can be done. And so, yes, follow Dr. Gold's advice and help your people find the spiritual journey that is right for them.
There are two more comments that are really important to read. Thank you, both of you. Michael Morrison, he's mentioning, thank you so much. Thank you and blessings to you at TIC. And that he's talking about North American indigenous tribes needing advice and the trauma that they're experiencing in the military service. And so he just wants to say, and I want to mention his name, Michael Morrison, you might be hearing from him. And then Jerry Cubana, he's an Army vet, civilian law enforcement veteran, psychiatrist, and Save a Warrior alumni. So he has heard a lot of stories. And he says, thankful to be present in this sacred space and to hear all of these healing stories. He's very grateful. So, a word on spirituality, because some people don't know the importance of spirituality. And I did a deep dive this past year on the science of spirituality. So, I just want everyone here to know that having a sense of a spiritual life, that means feeling connected to something larger than themselves. It might be God, it might be the universe, it might be love, it might be the earth. It might be feeling that we are connected in a web of our human community. Any of those things, connecting to something greater than ourselves, has been shown to decrease depression, anxiety, trauma, cardiovascular disease, and even mortality. And so we have lost that, and we are trying to invoke it again and bring it back in. And so, so much gratitude for today and for you being here. Any last words, Ed? We have 2 minutes.
I'll just recite a simple closing prayer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Um, I do invite everybody to look at my books because they are loaded with this material that we've been sharing today. But a very simple closing prayer, words of Buddha that are actually on a beautiful, beautiful placard in Vietnam and the site of a terrible battle that is now, again, it's been restored and it's a beautiful ancient sacred site. And when we arrive there, we read this: hatreds never cease by hatreds in this world. By love they cease. This is the ancient law. So when we're dealing with trauma, we're working together to cleanse the hatred and flood our survivors and each other and our world with love. So let's keep doing our work with utmost love. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you. Dr. Gold, do you want to end this today? Thank you so much, everybody.
Wow, what a brilliant presentation. Thank you so much, Ed. Really appreciate you. And Toby, thank you for moderating so beautifully and reflecting this ceremonial process. It's really, and ritual process has been fantastic. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Please continue to meet with us for our quarterly symposiums and feel free to email us if you have questions. Just go to USC IIHW and you can find all of our upcoming events there and just stay connected. This is our community, so thank you very much for showing up.